Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Monroe, and I will be your guest lecturer for weeks 11 and 12 of the module The Human, the Non-Human, and the Natural Contract. Before I get into what we'll be doing over the next 2 weeks, let me say a bit about myself. I'm an instructor of applied ethics at St. Petersburg College in Florida, where I've worked for about a decade and a half. And I also happen to be a former student on Staffordshire's MA and currently a postgrad researcher working on my PhD thesis at Staffordshire with David Webb and Steve Brown. And the subject of my thesis is Michel Serres' ethical theory. So I'm grateful to Professor Bill for letting me take part in this course and talk with you guys about The Parasite, which is the book that he's asked me to sort of give you guys a quick overview of. There's a lot going on in The Parasite, and in fact, it could be its module all to itself. There's so much going on that's important to Serres' overall body of work. But we'll take a couple key themes and work them through over the next couple of weeks. So The Parasite was originally published in 1980, so about a decade before The Natural Contract. And one reason it would be interesting to have a look at some of these ideas that appear in The Parasite is that they reappear again in The Natural Contract. So you have no doubt seen, if you remember the chapter, The Natural Contract, which we'll look back at this week, there's explicit mention of this thing called the parasite, which describes a certain kind of basic relation that Serres thinks obtains as a sort of fundamental way of getting at the relations between different kinds of beings and different forms of organization and so on. And a lot of that you've actually worked through on this module already, as I've looked through what you've done. We'll sort of narrow the focus of the microscope a little bit on this idea of the parasite, and then sort of play with some of the key themes from the text. So I'm going to provide for you guys the newest translation of the Parasite, which was done this year by a guy called Randolph Burks, who has translated a good deal of Serres' other work. I'm sending you guys a link because it's open and available on Academia. That way you don't have to buy the Parasite. You can parasite it from Randolph Burks. And basically we'll keep the reading fairly light, I think, because I know you guys have a lot of work that you're doing towards preparing your final papers, and that's probably occupying a lot of your attention at this point. So for week 11, we'll just reread a key section of the Natural Contract. So that would be pages 36 through 40 of the Paulson and MacArthur translation. And we'll read the preface and the opening bit in The Parasite, called Rat's Meals. Right? The preface gives a fairly nice overview of what's going on, and Rat's Meals is sort of like the introduction to the whole text. It's a rereading of La Fontaine's fable of the country rat and the city rat. And I like focusing in here because this really highlights Serres' use of stories to get at deep philosophical insights. So rather than just launching off with a sort of descriptive way of talking about what parasitism is, Serres prompts our thought by giving us something metaphorical to think through to get at the idea of what this parasitic relationship is all about. This also illustrates Serres' commitment to interdisciplinarity, which I think is one of the key and really interesting things about him as a thinker, is that his way of doing philosophy doesn't really involve, in all cases, doing what's recognizably academically called philosophy. So we'll sort of think through that fable. And then as I work out in the notes some of the key ideas of parasitism, I'll make allusions to other parts of the Parasite text. And so you may want to dip into those sort of additional readings where I make references. Because the Burks translation is the entire book, you'll have the option to sort of dip in and see where what I've been talking about that might help flesh out the picture just a bit. Now, in week 12, my goal is to sort of bring this back around, some of the key ideas in the Parasite, to my specific research, which again is really focused on the ethical theory that's latent in a lot of Serres' work, and you guys have been picking through a bunch of that, so you'd be a good group to sort of sound off some ideas with. But in particular, we'll focus in on the idea of the quasi-object and work through how I think that has a significant impact on the very foundations of Western philosophical ethics. So we'll take you back to Philosophy 101. We'll read sections of Plato's Euthyphro, and we'll read the theory of the quasi-object from the Parasite, and we'll sort of look at those comparatively to see where Sayre has, to take a page from Euthyphro's book, from the Euthyphro itself, aimed a blow at the foundation of the state, where here the state is Socratic Western philosophical ethics. I hope that my lecture for week 12 will be a little bit more interactive and multimedia. That's my goal, partly because I think while it pays to study Sayre directly, doing textual analyses and those sorts of things, he's committed to the idea that even everyday practices that might seem to lack any sort of philosophical rigor and import are actually ways into thinking about deep sort of metaphysical ideas. And so we'll think through the quasi-object in relation to both the human, the non-human, and the world. Right? So maybe draw some explicit connections not only to the work that I'm doing for my thesis, but also back to the module that you all have been working through. So I'm still figuring out quite how to post everything in Blackboard, but for the meantime, I'll use the announcement area to both post your readings and links to things that I think might be important. I also intend to assemble a sort of short bibliography of secondary sources about the Parasite in case you'd like to investigate it a little more deeply on your own. So I think that's enough from me for now. I will be posting the notes for week 11, ideally by the end of the weekend. It may take me a little bit into next week. This is a busy time for me at my day job as we're coming to the end of our term, and I've got piles of grading to be done. But my goal is to have them on Sunday, and by Monday at the latest, I'll have the notes up for week 11, and then we'll go from there. I look very forward to talking about this with you guys on the discussion post and getting your thoughts and feedback on the ideas. It's fantastic to meet you all, and I look forward to great conversations.